how about just to kick things off, if you could tell us all a little bit more about your role? I know it's kind of a two-headed position for you, where you're not just looking at Times branding, but you're also working with partners on branded content as well.
Yeah, for sure. So at Time, I run brand and content strategy. So both looking at what Time as a brand should look like, what we stand for. Because for the first time in almost 100 years, we're a standalone brand again. So 2 years ago, we were acquired by Mark and Lynn Benioff. And after being part of a conglomerate for so long, we had never really thought about like, what does Time bring to the table, as opposed to what does Meredith bring to the table or Time Inc. bring to the table. And so a big portion of my job is thinking about what is the vision for Time going forward, and how do we propel ourselves into the next 100 years. And then the second part of my job is a lot around what we do with clients. So especially in branded content, how do we take then the vision of Time, the value of Time, and bring it to clients so that they can benefit from the equity that our brand really can drive for them. So we spend a lot of time working with clients, listening to their objectives, listening to what they're trying to accomplish, but maybe don't have the means to do it, A, because they don't have the audience, or B, they don't have the content. And then really think about, okay, how can Time solve this for them, but in a way that's super authentic to what we stand for.
Amazing. I feel like we're about to learn a lot, not just on how Time is pivoting and changing its brand message, but it sounds like you can bring a lot of insights for uh, given what you do with your clients as
Yes,
well.
for sure.
So just as a foundation, let's talk about 2020. Um, how has Time pivoted, or what were some of the challenges that you needed to face, and how did you handle them?
Yeah, I mean, 2020 has been a year for the books, I'm sure, for everyone on that's looking and watching right now. Um, we went into the year thinking we had a brand strategy in place, thinking we knew how we were going to approach the world, and then March came along, the pandemic hit, and we kind of put everything on hold. And we said, okay, the world's changed. Time is such a strong point in that change of giving people perspectives, giving people the opportunity to understand what's going on. And so we kind of put a hold on thinking more long term, and instead thought about what's our short term plan? How do we really drive value and utility with our clients, with our consumers, even with our employees, to really see this moment in the right light? Like, there's so much negative, there's so much uncertainty and unknown, and we wanted to be able to balance that with some of the hope that we could put out there and some of the great stories we were seeing. And so we spent a lot of time both as a brand and editorially thinking about that. So we have like our Finding Hope covers, and we have the stories of people like Chef Jose Andres and what they were doing during a pandemic to bring good to the world. Um, and then with clients, what we saw is a lot of them were wanting to be a part of the conversation, but didn't have the means to do it. They didn't have the content. They really cared about some of the issues like equality, but again, couldn't create something right away. And so as a brand, we thought, how do we drive that value for them? How do we take what are our mainstays, like the Time 100, which is a huge black tie gala with this amazing event at Lincoln Center, New York, and a 2-day summit, and make that go online. So similar to what you guys have done, really pivoting to
Well,
reach people in a way that is valuable to them. And so for the first time ever, we launched literally in less than a month our first Time 100 Talk series, which was in honor of the Time 100 Gala. And we started bringing all of these voices to the forefront, making it available to everyone. So in our first one, we had Dr. Fauci as one person, but John Legend was also on that episode, and Angelina Jolie, and they all talked about the pandemic in different perspectives. And then we were able to bring in clients as well to sponsor some of those themes that were really important to them, and work with them to curate content around those themes. So a lot of what we've done is think about how do you pivot to the current moment, but really still stay true and authentic to our brand.
so with that, specifically like the Time 100, could you talk a little bit more about the execution of that and what ended up becoming available in its entirety, um, both as you reimagine the event and the sort of lasting content that's still available, and maybe some of the lessons learned there.
Yeah. So it's become a weekly, if not bi-weekly event for us. So we've seen so much success in people wanting to hear voices, of people in all different industries and all different fields. And so when we started, it was like the first time we did it, we were doing a live show. And our team is so great at programming uh, speakers to come in, and it was really about how do we drive the relevance. And every day the topics were changing, right? Like I can't even imagine, like the amount of topics we covered is just so astronomical, as I'm sure everyone feels. Um, and so what we've done is we built time.com/time100 talks, where you can look and watch all of the past talks, but every week we launch a new one. So Thursdays at 1 o'clock Eastern, we have a new Time 100 talk. So like today we have Priyanka Chopra Jonas talking about some of the work she's done with the UN. We have, I'm going to blank on names, but that she's one of the people we have this week. But every week it changes. And what we've done is really taken user feedback. After every talk, we send a survey to everyone that came to the talk. We ask them what they liked, what they didn't like, who they want to see, and we really take user feedback and generate the content off of that as a place, because we want our consumers to feel that they're getting value out of the content we're putting out there. And so it's an iterative process, and every week we're changing what we're focused on to enable the opportunity to answer consumer questions and also address what happened yesterday or today as opposed to last week, which has been changing so quickly.
So I have to compliment you on that. I feel like that is not a historically like media approach to execution, and so the fact that you're reaching back into the audience, getting feedback from them, and then truly doing these micro pivots along the way is it's a lot like more like the tech world where we
Mhm.
think about like lean product development and iterative development. So that's amazing, really
Yeah,
amazing.
I mean, we do operate. We call ourselves the world's oldest startup. We're 97 years old, but we literally operate like a startup, which it has its advantages. It allows us to be nimble and quick, and react quickly to a lot of things that are happening right now.
So just one more thing on the Time 100. Tell me on the sponsor side, what are some of the sponsors looking to get out of it, and so like, and I guess what draws them to your content in particular?
Yeah. So I think you said it earlier, but Time is such a trusted brand, right? Like throughout this world of misinformation and uncertainty and the unknown, Time's been really able to differentiate itself as a brand that doesn't lean one way or the other drastically, doesn't have like a distinct point of view, but very much is like, let us share with you what's happening in the world, and let you form your own perspectives. And I think brands, that really resonates with brands. A lot of them aren't ready to necessarily take like a hard stand, but they want to be a part of that conversation. And so by being a sponsor of a talk, we usually theme some of our talks so they could be about equality, for instance, and a brand like P&G will come in and say like, okay, equality is really important to us. Here's how we think about equality. And while they obviously don't influence the content itself, what they do is they surround that content with their equality messaging as well. And so they get to authentically be a part of that conversation, without feeling forced. Because a lot of corporations sometimes feel forced. They're like, oh, this is the topic of the moment. Let me be a part of it. And what Time does is really gives them the opportunity to not just sponsor something, but actually feel like they're a part of that conversation.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious about just because in my welcome I talked about like speed of engagement and quality of engagement. What are the cycle times on both working with a sponsor and also the individual, iconic interviews that you're doing?
So interviews happen like the day before the day. I mean, like we book talent up until the last minute, just because people's schedules change on a dime. So, we're planning out through the rest of the year, and we're already seeing changes in those schedules because people's like the caliber of talent we get, they're so influential that they sometimes they're free, and then all of a sudden something changes and something else happens, or the world changes. Like we before the election, we had some speakers we were working with, and then Biden announced his like coronavirus task force, and one of the guys was on it. He's like, sorry guys, can't
Yeah,
can't make it anymore. So our team is really good at though having, we have such a roster of people that want to work with us. The Time brand has such like that iconic status of like people are so proud of being part of the brand that that works really well for us. With sponsors, we usually try and plan a little farther out, but sometimes it happens on a dime too. Like we have an opportunity if we have an opportunity that comes up because something happens in the news, like a new vaccine could be coming out. It's like, okay, like what are we doing with that? Is there an opportunity to add that into a talk? Is there a sponsor that actually makes sense because they're in the healthcare space? How do we bring them in? So we will work quickly if we need to, but otherwise we also have a calendar where we think like when we hope that there's not something momentous that happens in the current events in a given week, that we can stick to a calendar of having certain topics that make sense. So leadership, we'll talk about equality, we'll talk about, like we've done some in sports and leadership and how that's made an impact in the world, especially during the pandemic when there haven't been sports, but sports have used their platform as a voice. So we'll have those tied in as well, and so that gives us opportunity to work longer tail with clients.
Yeah, I even saw business and technology content
Yeah,
as well. That was really engaging. So credit to you and the team on
yeah,
that. So let's talk a little bit more about time's evolution and the kind of we mentioned trust, and that I mean whenever I think of time, I think of trust being like a foundational element of the Time brand. I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit more about what are those key brand elements, and what are you doing? What are you looking to do going forward
yeah.
with the Time brand?
Trust is definitely so important to us, but everyone talks about trust, right? If you look at like New York Times has the Truth Campaign, and every publisher has trust or truth in some form in its mission. So what's really important to us is what differentiates Time as a trustworthy brand, and that's a lot of the work I'm doing right now. I'm actually have like a huge brand strategy workflow going right now for delivery in January, where we're really going to think about what are the right values for us. We talk a lot about trust. We talk a lot about impact. We talk a lot about perspectives and giving people the tools and informing them of what's happening, but not just giving them one side of things. It's very rare that Time takes like a stance on anything. We take a stance on things like climate change. It's real. Science says it's real, so we won't tell you it's not. But most other things you won't see that. So a great example of this is like Guns in America, where last year we did a huge issue where, um, you know, such a controversial topic, but there's people that believe both sides of it and very strongly. And so how do you talk to both of them? So we brought 200 people in a room. There were NRA members and there was people who had loved ones that were killed by guns, and like brought them together in conversation so they could hear from each other, learn from each other, and at least understand other people's perspectives. And then we put together a whole interactive site where you can listen to audio clips of these people talking to each other and telling their points of view. And to me, that's just like such a mainstay of what Time does. It gives you perspective. So you can form your own opinion, or you can at least have a knowledgeable conversation with someone, as opposed to us telling you, like, this is what you should believe. Like, we never want people to be like, oh, Time told me this, and that's why I believe it. It's like, Time gave me the knowledge to form my own opinion. And so going into 2021 in the future, that's a lot about what we think about. How do we take those perspectives? How do we make sure that we create those conversations? The Time cover is such a conversation starter. So how do we use that to our advantage as well? And not just in a magazine, but in digital. And like, if you go on our Instagram, you'll see like we animate the cover every week. So today it's about winter is coming with COVID, and you see it kind of, has reminiscent of darker times, but in a way that really comes to life through the animation, which you don't get necessarily on a magazine. So we're really thinking about going into the future. How do we evolve our brand to meet the different platforms people are on, but also give them the right content to do that?
So I have to say one important takeaway there, your ability to foster conversations on both sides of an issue is so necessary right now and so welcome, given the sort of divisiveness that we've experienced, kind of at least across the United States, and the polarity of opinions. Just the nature of bringing people together, ideally in the future in the same room once again, and enabling them to have just constructive and genuine dialogue instead of yelling at each other and being, one-sided is really, it's very inspiring to me. And I think we have time for one more short question. So I'm just curious about like data becoming a priority for you, and more data-driven decision making, and how you work with
Mhm.
your brand and your clients. Is that
Yeah.
something you can address?
Definitely. So, insights is a huge part, I think, of how we understand our clients and our consumers and the industries in which we're operating in. So, we have a small and mighty insights team of one person right now, but we work really hard to take our first party data, like thinking about what people are consuming on the site, why they're consuming it, their consumer journey on the site, as well as syndicated data to see what we're seeing across industries and trends. And we use that really as a stepping off point. So when we're putting together proposals for clients, if we're going to a tech client, we'll look at like, what are we seeing in tech? Like, what are we seeing with those types of decision makers on our site? What kind of content are they most interested in? And it may not just be tech content we're looking for. We're looking at like, what are the adjacencies as well that they care about? So that when we go to a client, we can actually put together a more robust, thoughtful package of what we can do to help them reach the right people. So, tech people aren't just interested in tech. They might be interested in sports and food and international politics,
Mhm.
making that up. So don't quote me on that. But how do we then put together like a really interesting proposal that could be a combination of both, site sponsorship and regular digital media, plus like branded content ideas that really help that tech company come to life in those spaces. So data plays a huge role in helping us use it as a jumping off point to really support our ideas.
It makes a ton of sense. Believe it or not, we're out of time. Um, Radhika, thank you so much for joining us today.